Hi everyone, welcome to tonight's webinar, Stop the Chaos, Everyday Management Tips for Mums with ADHD. My name is Zoe Kessler and I'll be your host this evening on behalf of PsychCentral.com. Now, before we introduce tonight's presenter, as always, I'd like to give you a little reminder that you'll be able to access the complete webinar online at Psych Central's YouTube channel later this week. And if you haven't already checked it out, Psych Central has videos and webinars on a wide variety of mental health topics with guest speakers from many disciplines. Now, during tonight's webinar, please feel free to ask questions by typing them into the question area on your control panel. We'll try to answer everyone's questions, but we'll also do our best to wrap up the session within an hour. So I'm very pleased to have ADHD expert and author Terry Matlen with us tonight. Terry has worked tirelessly on behalf of women with ADHD for many years now. I personally first became acquainted with her work shortly after I started my blog, ADHD from A to Zoe, right here for PsychCentral.com. And I've just really been enjoying her work and communicating with Terry over the years. And I was honored to have her write an endorsement for my own book, ADHD According to Zoe. So I returned the favor for Terry's latest book, The Queen of Distraction. It's really pretty recent. I hope you have a copy of it. It's full of tips on how women with ADHD can get on top of their chaotic lives and get more done. So, of course, she'll be talking more about that tonight, and she'll answer your questions towards the end of the webinar. So there are a lot of you with us here live tonight, so please do make sure to get your questions in early by typing them into the questions box on your control panel. And as I mentioned, we'll try to get to everyone's questions, but fortunately, you can also check out Terry's books, her website at addconsults.com, and access her coaching services and even more, all online after the webinar. So without further ado, welcome Terry Matlen.
Hi Zoe, thank you so much for having me tonight, and thank you to Psych Central, one of my favorite websites for mental health and ADHD information. Thank you for having me on tonight. I'm going to be talking about moms with ADHD, and the title of my session is oh, now I'm a little thrown off. I got a message here to show my screen.
I'm just inviting you to share your slide presentation with us. So we'll get that set up and we'll get rolling. Over to you.
Okay, we're good to go. So I'm going to talk about moms with ADD, and the session is titled Stop the Chaos, Tips for Creating a Peaceful Household When Mom Has ADHD. I'm assuming that all of you here tonight are moms with ADHD, and if not, welcome anyhow. We're going to have some fun and hopefully learn something along the way. So this is where you can reach me. That's my website, my main website, my email address at the bottom. We're going to talk about things in general for women with ADHD and moms with ADHD, and then we'll get into some real specific tips. A lot of these tips are in my books. The latest one that you mentioned, The Queen of Distraction, has tons and tons of tips. What I would like to share with all of you is that I have ADHD as well. A lot of people ask, you know, how can you go around talking and writing about ADHD if you don't live it? Well, I do live it, and I've lived it my entire life. I also have two young adult daughters, one who has ADHD that you can see here on this picture. So I have the opportunity to come to you from understanding ADHD from all different angles, including my own personal life. So let's get started. Is this you? If any of these questions resonate something within you, then you have come to the right place. Starting with, why am I unable to sit and play board games with my kids? Why can I obtain a college degree yet can't figure out what to cook every night, let alone remember to get those ingredients while I'm at the grocery store? Why does the sight of a pile of dirty laundry make my heart palpitate? Why do I have panic attacks in the grocery store? Why can't I get my kids to sit through dinner? We're going to address these questions tonight, and I have to tell you that I do still struggle, even though I've been in this field now for nearly 20 years, and I'm considered an expert in the field, and I think Zoe will will probably agree that even the experts screw up sometimes, and that's just part of living with an ADHD brain. So to give you a little background on one of my early screw-ups when my kids were young, my youngest one, the one with ADHD that you just saw, wanted to be a brownie at school, after school. And I thought, oh, well, that's a great healthy activity for her. And, I signed her up, and I was excited for her, and she was excited. And I was excited until the first day she came home with her first badge. If you have daughters or nieces, or maybe you yourself were brownies in your youth, you know that, when you earn these certain badges from activities that you've done, you sew them on your little brown vest. Well, I don't sew, and I'm not that I'm proud to say it, but I'm at the point in my life now where, that's just me. I never really learned to sew, let alone cook, but we'll talk about cooking later. So she came home with these badges, and I thought, oh gosh, if I start sewing, she's going to look horrible, and I'm going to make her look bad, and I'm going to be so, embarrassed. So at that point, I already knew about my ADD and was learning about, how do I make my world, my life better by coming up with creative ways to get around things that other people can do naturally, and I couldn't. I was trying to be creative. So I was thinking, what can I do here? And I came up with what I thought was a really brilliant idea. And I figured, okay, I'm going to staple these suckers on her vest because that's simple. So it worked. They stayed on remarkably. I won't tell you that I didn't wash that vest, but these badges stayed on. And then a few weeks in on this whole brownie thing, she came home one day crying. And I said, what's wrong? She said, Mommy, this vest, I can't wear it anymore. And I said, well, what's the matter? She said, it scraped all my skin off. So sure enough, the staples had dug into her fragile, sensitive little skin, and she was bleeding, and that was the end of that. So I assigned sewing to my husband, who, at that point realized that this was not going to work. So my point being that, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter how long you're in this journey of learning about your ADHD, we're all going to screw up, and that's just part of it. So let's get into the purpose of tonight's presentation. Did you know that over 4 million women in the United States alone have ADHD, 4 million plus? We're thinking even more than 4 million. And that most have not been diagnosed or have even been treated because they're often misdiagnosed. Usually what we clinicians find is that they're coming to us with a diagnosis of depression, because by the time you or a woman seeks out help for her ADHD, it's that the feeling of I just can't get it together, I'm depressed, I don't even want to wake up in the morning anymore, I'm such a failure. So of course a clinician is going to hear depression and anxiety and treat her for either or both or whatever it is, and completely miss the ADHD. And that's a huge problem, along with the fact that so many clinicians just don't have a clue about ADHD, especially as how it presents in women with ADHD. So we need to get the education that we need to help ourselves and our families and our friends and people that we live with and work with, and to get the proper treatment for our ADHD. And we need to start reframing who we are as women with an ADHD brain. We need to really ditch the shame and switch out of into new strategies to use, just like what I mentioned earlier with the vest, although that kind of blew up in my face. But you have to start thinking in those terms, that if it doesn't work for you, find another way that does work. And we also need to realize that ADD is not a personality disorder, a character disorder, or a flaw, or a sign of laziness. It's a real, true medical condition. So let's say it again, it's a real, true medical condition. So what I want to do tonight is to help moms with ADD cope with everyday situations that seem so easy for other women to handle. Like, well, as moms with ADD, we feel that we should be able to have that perfectly clean, uncluttered house, ha ha ha, right? Well-behaved children, ha ha ha, right? A full-time job, just like everybody else does, and do it well. Well, it's not as easy for us to do it like everybody else does. So again, we need to begin to reframe who we are, moms with ADD, and change our internal expectations which I'll talk about soon, and shift our strategies like we're beginning to talk about so that we can make ADD work for us. Another example of a shift in strategies, I was talking to Zoe just before we went on, and I said, I am very hypersensitive to getting distracted by noises, by smells, by visual things that just throw me way off. It's one of my biggest problems that is connected with my ADHD. It's actually called a sensory processing disorder, which we're learning a little bit more about. We know this in kids, but not so much in adults. But I'm very distracted when I get thrown off by hearing things. And so with my younger daughter, again, when she was young, she just could not sit still at the dinner table. She'd fall off her chair. She would have tantrums. She would stomp her feet, all kinds of commotion. And it just made everybody miserable. And this went on for quite a while until I finally talked to her psychologist at the time, and I said, you know what, we're all falling apart here every night at dinner time. And he looked at me and he said, well, why are you forcing her to sit at the table with you if it's just not working? And I thought, what a profound statement. Why am I forcing her to do something she can't do? So at that point, we let her eat in another room with the TV on, which was a great strategy because the TV calmed her down because it would distract her from things, and she would begin to eat automatically. We wouldn't have to tell her, you need to eat, you need to, finish your meal. She just automatically started to eat. So that's an example of a shift in strategy. So we're going to talk about the characteristics of women with ADHD, and do any of these sound like you? Maybe you're physically restless, you're disorganized maybe, maybe not, I doubt that, but I guess you are. Maybe you're a procrastinator. I don't know of any women with ADD who aren't. Maybe you get easily bored, and that's because you have a turbocharged brain. Even if your body is lethargic, like women with the inattentive subtype, maybe your body you could sit for hours and just sort of daydream, but I will bet you that your brain is very hyperactive and that you do get easily bored. You might have a quick temper. You might be moody. You might be an idea person. Now, I know that a lot of these things are sounding negative, but I think we have to come to terms with some of the difficulties that we do face. You might be lethargic and slow-moving in the morning. In my house, my family knows not to talk to me for a couple hours after I wake up because I just, number one, will not hear what they have to say because I'm not there, or two, I'll get really irritated, and that's not fair to anybody. You might be spacey. You might be shy, easily embarrassed. You might have a hard time shutting down at night. You might be a worrier. Worrying is a huge problem. We just kind of get stuck with our own feelings and obsess and worry. On the other hand, you might be a very warm and kind and creative person. We talked a little bit about the sensitivities of touch and noise and commotion. Those are sensory issues, and that's another whole presentation. You might hyper-focus on things of interest, and this is where there's a total misunderstanding of the term attention deficit disorder. It's not a deficit. It's a matter of controlling your attention. We have tons of attention. We can spend 5 hours on Facebook and think that it's 10 minutes that have gone by. Another interesting thing is for women, moms with ADHD, is we tend to have worse PMS symptoms. We have trouble with details. We can see the whole picture, but getting from A to Z can be torture and almost impossible for a lot of us. And many of us may suffer from low self-esteem, which would make sense if you've grown up with undiagnosed, in particular, undiagnosed ADHD, and you've struggled and you didn't know why, and all through your life people have said, well, what's wrong with you? Well, you're not living up to your potential. Why can't you do what everybody else does? So what happens is you become, depressed, and you develop low self-esteem. There's also commonly seen, this is a big one for me too, is having difficulty making decisions. Everything seems to have an equal amount of weight. Do I do A or do I do B? Don't ask me. We're often daydreamers. We can seem self-absorbed, and that's really where we're not really self-absorbed, but I think we have a hard time disconnecting from our thoughts and our fantasies and whatever we're thinking about to connect with people around us. So ADD is not an excuse. It's an explanation. Again, it's a real medical condition, and it's recognized by the medical community now and national organizations. So we'll get into now special issues that moms with ADD face. And a lot of this comes right out of Sari Solden's work. She wrote a groundbreaking book called Women with Attention Deficit Disorder. And that's a book that I hope all of you, if you don't own it, that you get it, because it changed my life. And Sari's work, she really has been my mentor, and her work has prompted me to want to, do the same kind of work, working with women. And this gets into the whole societal expectations, which is directly out of Sari Solden's work. Societal expectations begin in our childhood when we're girls, young girls, and we're taught that we need to be nurturing and caring and taking care of people and learning how to cook and dealing with household chores and having a career, going to college, and being able to do all of these things. It's a little much when you have ADHD in the background. Women are seen as the caretakers, so we're supposed to direct and oversee activities of the whole family with very little or no support. Whereas, men and maybe executive-type women, they will have secretaries and assistants at work, but the rest of us just don't have that kind of support in general. So there's extra stress if you're a working parent, because women still, to this day, are doing most of the child care and housework. I know that's improving, but we're still not quite there. In addition, we have hormonal changes, and I hear my dog crying, so I know that's going to not only bother me, but bother you guys, so I'm going to let him out. Give me 1 second, and he's out of here. Go, little guy. I'm back. So the hormonal changes we see when we enter perimenopause, menopause, and menopause itself, postmenopause, and what happens is with the change in hormones, particularly estrogen, ADHD symptoms tend to worsen. This is something a lot of women with ADHD don't know, and it's important to know. So I would suggest that you look at the work of Dr. Patricia Quinn. It's Quinn. She has some books out. She has a lot of articles online. And I also devote an entire chapter of my book, The Queen of Distraction, on hormonal changes and how it affects you and your ADHD and what you can do about it. Also, special issues for moms is the stay-at-home mom. Your days are really unstructured, aren't they? It's really hard to get yourself to, keep up with the laundry. I hear that a lot. The piles of clutter, the toys, figuring out dinner every night. And if you have smaller children, the constant interruptions, the mommy. I mean, I really almost pulled my hair out in those early days. And you get very little positive feedback. And I mean, nobody's going to come up to you and say, "Ooh, your cupboards are so clean. Oh, I love the way that you organize your food in the pantry." It's just we don't get that. Like you might at work. I hope you get some positive feedback at work. But at home, we generally don't hear those wonderful things. And then there's that high noise level with the kids. And, the statistics show, the research shows that if you are a parent with ADHD, you have about a 50% chance of having a child or more with ADHD as well. And women usually set the tone in relationships, keeping everyone in balance. How do we balance everything when it feels like we can't even balance our own lives? But that's, part of being a mom, period. And we also often have difficulty communicating our needs to our partner, our spouse, and keeping our end up in the disagreements we may have because we tend to be oversensitive and overreactive. And I know when we hear that from another person, we want to slam them. It makes me very angry, but the truth is, that's kind of our wiring, is that we are at times short-tempered. So do as I say, not as I do. We know that ADHD symptoms are very similar in kids as they are in what we see in adults, but they present in different ways. And I can't get into a whole lot of that right now, but the overview of this is the problem. Here's the problem. If you as a mom with ADD procrastinates and you're overloaded with last-minute deadlines, how are you able to help your child with homework strategies and not wait until the last minute when the assignment is due? So if you procrastinate, how do you not have your child procrastinate? If mom is disorganized, how can she help her child with organizational skills? It's that whole blind leading the blind kind of problem. If you're hyperactive, how can you slow down enough to enjoy one-on-one time with your child? If you're a daydreamer, how can you give the needed attention that your child needs? The child may unfortunately interpret that as you not caring, which we know is not the case, but that's how it can feel. If you're overreactive, how can you be patient with your child who may also have a short fuse, especially if your child also has ADD? By the way, I'm using ADD and ADHD interchangeably, but it really is the same thing. And if you're annoyed by stimuli, like if you get overwhelmed with noises and certain textures and sounds and all that, then how do you cope with the normal bustling activities at home? And here we have Supermom. And we'll talk about how to manage living with ADD in some general ways, some general tips. Again, there's society's expectations that are many of having that perfect home, the perfect meal, putting on holidays, packing for vacations, planning vacations, just keeping it all together. And what happens is we internalize these expectations, and if we don't live up to them, again, we talked about this earlier, we can feel depressed and empty, angry, have poor self-esteem, and a horrible sensation of shame. That's a huge problem for many of us with ADHD, this feeling of shame and failure, like, why can't I be a better mom? What am I doing wrong? I like the acronym EASE, E-A-S-E. E for educate. We need to educate ourselves about ADHD. We need to learn to accept our ADD and celebrate our strengths. Now this is really a tough one, the accepting, because it can take years and years after knowing that you have ADD, many years before you get to that point where you can say, yeah, my house is a mess, but I don't care. I'd rather spend time with my kids at the barn or at the fair or whatever. But we also don't talk enough about our strengths. We need to simplify our lives and eliminate over commitments. We have a tendency to say, yes, we're people pleasers. So if the teacher of your child's classroom says to you, hey, Mrs. Matlen, would you mind baking 24 brownies for the soccer team? Well, Mrs. Matlen might automatically say, sure, I'd be happy to. But underneath, Mrs. Matlen hates baking and hates cooking and hates being in the kitchen. But we tend to be people pleasers and say yes way too many times. So I'm going to give you a little tip. First of all, I think there's at least 2 reasons why we tend to say yes to everything. One is there's that impulse of just saying yes, not really thinking it through. But the other point that I have about why we say yes is it runs a little bit deeper. I think it's because we are, wanting to be people pleasers because of all the years that we've seen ourselves as, quote, disasters or failures or whatever you want to call yourselves, all those years of not doing well. And so we want to kind of make up for it by saying yes and being helpful and being there for other people. And I say, get rid of that kind of thinking. It sounds easy, but something that you can work on. But here's a tip. When someone says, hey, will you do this? Will you volunteer and go on the bus with the kids to the zoo next week? Say this and practice saying this in your head until it's automatic. Say, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you. And go home and really think about it. Do you want to go to the zoo with 50 kids on the bus? I sure wouldn't, and I didn't, and that was okay. I let myself be okay with that. So practice saying that, and then you can say to the person, I've thought about it and I'd really like to help you out, but maybe another time I can be available to you. So what you see here is one woman who is sticking out, and you can either look at this in a good way or in a bad way. She's sticking out because she's got more colorful clothes on, or she's sticking out because she looks vastly different from all the other women. So what I'm hoping that you'll do right now where you're sitting, while you're watching the slide and listening to my voice, is to give yourself permission now to break that mold in order for your world to work for you instead of against you. Change your expectations of yourself. There is no right way to make a meal, to organize your home, to raise your children, especially when you have this ADHD. So make up your own rules that work for you, not against you. So now you can look at this slide and say, hey, that one's pretty cool. She's got the courage to stand out and be a little different. This is one of my favorite slides. I look at this slide, and part of me wants to slap their faces to be honest with you. This is that perfect family that we hear about, that we try to identify with and try to match. But at least I'll speak for myself, I can't be like that. I can't have these perfectly groomed children with not a spot of food on their clothes. And look at that turkey. At my age, I have never, and this is being 100% honest with you, I have never roasted a turkey. They've always scared the heck out of me. And looking at all the other things on the table, making it beautiful. And look at that kitchen in the background. Everything is just meticulous and perfect. I don't live that kind of life. I'm guessing many of you don't either. This perfect family doesn't exist in my world, and it shouldn't have to. I don't care anymore what the gal down the block does on Thanksgiving. In my world, I bring in food that's already made for Thanksgiving, or I ask somebody else to take on the harder parts, and I take on the things that I am okay with doing. So again, advocating for moms with ADD that it's okay to do things differently. In addition to, like things like the holiday dinner here, let's say you're a stay-at-home mom. Well, it's okay to bring a babysitter in so that you can have some time away from the chaos in your home and just hide out in your bedroom and watch Netflix or, take a bubble bath or whatever you want to do. It's thinking outside the box and allowing yourself to be okay with that. And when you become okay with that and learn these different strategies, you are free, and it's so liberating once you let go of those expectations. This is more of what my life is about. This is my world. This is my kitchen. This is me. So how do we manage our ADD? I don't know if you can read the text, so I'll help you out here. On the top, it says treatment. Again, it's really important to get the appropriate treatment. If you're here tonight because you think you might have ADD, you kind of fit the profile of someone with ADD, please go to a mental health clinician who really has a good handle on adult ADD. Get evaluated and see if you have it. If you do have it and you're here tonight because you want to learn more about it, make sure that your treatment is optimal, that you're on the right medications if you need to be on medications, that you're seeing a therapist if you need to see a therapist, and that you're doing all the right things. Treatment can also include coaching. ADD coaching has been incredibly helpful to women, men and women with ADHD. And just to mention my own program, the Queens of Distraction is a group coaching program that I offer. You can go to queensofdistraction.com, because I know that ADD coaching can be extremely expensive for many people. So with group coaching that I run on mine, it's affordable to just about anybody, because we work as a group. The next circle on the right is educate. We talked about how it's important to know more about ADD and to educate the people around you. Accepting your ADD, we talked a little bit about that and how long it can take. And learning to forgive yourself. The next circle, the blue one, is delegating. Don't take it all on yourself. Delegate the chores and duties to your family. The next one is humor. This is another tough one. It might take you a while to get to this point, where when you have a little faux pas, I can't say it, faux whatever. Use your humor instead of just melting to the ground in a heap of pity, self-pity, and anger and self-hate. Just say, that's my ADD kicking in. My family now, we use this all the time because I'm at that point in my life where I can see the humor in some of these situations. Again, simplifying your life, meals, chores, shopping, entertainment. We'll get into specifics later. We talked about eliminating the overcommitments. These are all things that will help you to manage your ADHD. These are my two books. The one on the right, Survival Tips, is my first book from 2005. And my newest book, The Queen of Distraction, that just came out, gosh, it's almost a year now. I can't believe it, Zoe. Both of these books have hundreds of tips that you can pick up and read about, and strategies that I'm talking about tonight, but way more than I have time for in this short webinar. So keep it in mind that the hallmark symptoms of ADD, the distractibility, procrastination, disorganization, and all that, it's really important and necessary to reframe the way you see yourself, which is as a mom with an ADD brain, not someone who's lazy, stupid, or crazy. So make those accommodations for yourself as needed. All right, the time that you've been waiting for, we're going to get into the real specifics. And meals, which is my favorite topic because it's the one I struggle with the most, especially when my kids were young. In fact, I remember when I first got married, before we had children, I made my first roast, some kind of roast beef thingy. And my husband said after he took his first bite, he said laughingly, "That's the best sliced wallet I ever had." Well, you know, the way he said it was, I could forgive him. I mean, I forgive him now. And it was actually very funny because it came out horrible. The first thing, especially again when I had a younger family, that I thought about when I woke up in the morning wasn't, you know, what time do I have to get my kid ready for school? It wasn't, you know, what is on my schedule for today? What am I forgetting? It was, what am I going to make for dinner tonight? Honest to God, that was the first thing that I thought of. So, some ideas for if you, like me, are challenged with the daily mealtime problem, carry out. I know that that is an expensive option for many of you, and my suggestion is to budget it in, because this has been such a great solution for me. That if you can maybe, you know, not go to the movies once a week, or get rid of Netflix, whatever it is, that you can put some money aside and use it for carry out just to make your life easier. The POS plan, that's also in my book in more detail, but the POS plan stands for Plan or Starve. And the way this works is you get a stack of index cards. You only need maybe 7, 8, 9. And the idea is on each card, on the front of the card, you write down one dinner menu. So an example would be roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and a salad. And already that alleviates the whole problem of having to make a decision, because already you've made that decision on one of those cards as one of your meals. On the back of that card, you would write down the ingredients, the things that you need. In my case, since I wasn't much of a cook, I would put ready-made chicken from the market, mashed potatoes that are already made that you can get at the grocery store, and a salad in a bag. For those of you who are better in the kitchen than I am, you know, you might write down cut up chicken for baking. That was me closing my window because the birds are singing outside, and that annoys me. So the plan or starve plan, you would then, you know, make up a plan for each card, 7, 8, 9, and then carry one set in your purse and keep one set at home so that you have your plan now. You don't have to start, you know, being obsessed about, well, what am I going to make tonight? What am I going to make tonight? In the book, it talks in more detail about how you can put little symbols on each card. So let's say you're out on the soccer field with your son, and you know you only have 10 minutes to make dinner. So you look at your stack of cards, and let's say, well, you have a red dot on the 10 or 15-minute dinners, and you know that, you know, you pull one of those out, and you know that this will work for you for that particular night. Next is shopping in smaller stores so that you're not overwhelmed. It's incredible to me to see what goes on at these supermarkets now. I mean, there's a whole aisle just for cereal now. And how can you make decisions on what to get when you're bombarded with these visual stimulations? So shop at smaller stores or markets whenever you can. Eat before the kids eat. I tried for years and years to not get indigestion or acid reflux, because it was just completely wild at dinner time at my house. And I began to learn that, you know, it wasn't worth it to me or my family. So I would often eat before the kids so that I could sit at the table and really focus on them and get them to talk about their day and talk with my husband without feeling so distressed myself. So let's get moving with household tips. I really love what Dr. Ned Hallowell talks about being organized. What he says is just be organized enough, meaning don't make yourself crazy by trying to have everything perfect, because it's just not going to happen if you have ADD. So the first one that I suggest is delegating areas in your house that are okay to be messy. I call them my messy zones. When my kids were young, it was the entire upstairs, because I could barely keep the kitchen up to par, let alone the rest of the house, let alone the whole upstairs. With young children or even teenagers, you know that their rooms are going to be a complete messy zone, so why fight what you can't win? So delegate spaces in your house where it's okay to have a mess. MIF, make it fun. So for younger kids, even older kids, beat the clock. You can set the clock and say, okay, whoever gets their toys put away first wins a little prize. The prize could be as simple as choosing what TV show they get to watch that night. It could be staying up 10 minutes later. It could be skipping a bath. I mean, if you really want to make it work, that'll do it. So making it fun when you have chores around the house. Finding a home, that was a huge thing for me. I work out of my home for the most part, and I hired a professional organizer. If you can give yourself one gift in your lifetime, hire a professional organizer. So in my case, it was just for my home office. I wish I could, have her do the entire house, but that gets a little costly. And one of the first things she taught me was to have a home for everything. And she showed me, she put something in her hand and she said, look, here's something we have to put away. Where does it go? And I said, I don't know. And she said, well, that's the problem. You don't have a home for it. So we spent hours finding homes for all the things that were in my office so that at one point it got to be as soon as I picked up something, I knew exactly where it needed to go. It solved a lot of problems. And then routines. People with ADD, kids and adults, we all need to maintain consistency and routines. As much as we hate routines and hate consistency, that's what's going to help you keep it together. And here we go again, that perfect family. Again, I could just slap those faces. I look at I never put weight on my kids. That wouldn't last for more than 5 minutes. And my kids would never have been able to sit quietly long enough for a family portrait like this. Look at them. Look at the little girl on the mom's left. She's sinking right into the mom, just so relaxed. I did not have children like that. Maybe you don't either. This is what I think of when I think of an ADD household. So what do we do to make things work for you and your family? Well, like I said before, many women with ADD are overreactive. We need either high stimulation if you're on the hyperactive side, or low stimulation if you get overwhelmed easily. So we have this low frustration tolerance. We're extra sensitive to criticism. Well, how does this affect your partner, your spouse, and your family? One thing we can do that really works well is problem solving as a team. Instead of walking around griping and whining or yelling, oh, there's a mess of clothes on the floor. I'm sick and tired of you just dumping your stuff on the floor. Instead, state it as a problem. Honey, I'm really worried that that Junior is going to trip over that pile of shoes that is in the mudroom. What do you think we can do to find a place for this so that everybody is safe? That way your spouse or your partner, your kids won't start getting all defensive. No finger pointing. It's, this is the problem. How can we solve it? With family battles, learn to remove yourself if necessary and discuss the problem later. It's giving yourself a timeout. We do that with our kids, don't we? We need to do it for ourselves. When you feel yourself ready to blow, remove yourself. But tell your family ahead of time that this is your plan when you're already calm. Tell your family that if I'm going to, start losing it, I'm going to just remove myself. I'll be in the bathroom. I'll be in the bedroom, whatever. Now, what's really good about this is that it models healthy behavior for your kids so that when they get to a point where they feel like they're going to have a meltdown, if you keep working with them on this, they'll learn at some point that they can go to their rooms and calm themselves down before it's too late. Picking your battles. Is it really that important if your kid runs out the door to school with 2 different colored socks? Is it worth screaming at her or him to get back in the house? My older daughter, who does not have ADHD, she would never wear a winter coat. I live in Michigan. Our winters are brutal, but she refused to wear a coat in the winter. I could never understand it. So I'd be barking at her as she ran out the door for the bus. Get your coat. Put your coat on. Put your hat on. Put your mittens on. She would just, not listen to me. And this went on for a long time until I realized that if this kid is cold, she's going to want to put on her coat. So I backed off, and it worked like a dream. And then listening before reacting. We have this tendency to get preoccupied with what we're doing, getting distracted, so that we don't really listen to what the person is saying to us. And that can cause quite a breakdown in the family and a breakdown in your relationship. So it's a really good habit to start working on, to force yourself to detach from what you're doing and pay attention to whoever's talking to you. Homework. Homework was a nightmare. It's probably a nightmare for you. This worked for me because my daughter with ADHD also has some other special needs. It may work for you, it may not, but it's worth a try. What I did was I went into my IEP meeting. That stands for Individualized Educational Plan, which is for kids who need extra help at school. And I said to the staff, I am no longer having my daughter do homework at home. It has destroyed my relationship with her. In my mind, my relationship with my daughter is more important than her homework being done. So we wrote into her IEP, no homework to be done at home, all to be done at school. Along the same lines as I, at different points of her life, hired tutors and college kids and high school kids to help her with the occasional project she did have to bring home, because I knew if I got involved, we would just go head to head. So now let's slide into some personal tips. The first one is getting help. There's something about us, I don't know what it is, maybe some of the things we talked about earlier, it's so hard for us to reach out and ask for help. It's like we just feel like we need to do it all. Well, there's nothing wrong. It is not a luxury to get someone to come in once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month to get help with cleaning the house. It's not a luxury to get a babysitter even if you're home. So get help. One of the best things that I can recommend that's absolutely free is going to support groups, being around other women who have ADHD just like you. Self-care. We all know how important it is to exercise and to take time out for ourselves, eat well, sleep well. That doesn't need to be stated, other than we now have research to back up the fact that things like exercise does indeed help with ADHD symptoms. And then downtime. It's not a luxury to take time off when you're coming home from work. After 8 hours of working so hard, transitioning is hard, but also it's hard to go from a work situation to your home situation. So my suggestion is, if possible, stop at a Starbucks or a coffee shop and take time to rejuvenate yourself, to calm yourself down, so that by the time you get to your second, which is your most important job as being mom and wife or partner, you have the energy to be there for your family. And if you can't stop at a coffee shop, you can always go to your room or to the bathroom for a quick bubble bath or listen to some soft music. Tell your family ahead of time, Mom needs some downtime. Organize. We're going to start going a little bit quicker because I think we're going to be running out of time. We do want to have time for questions and answers. So organizing. When you have ADHD, visual cues are incredibly helpful. I can't tell you how much having bulletin boards has helped me. I have bulletin boards all throughout my home office, using index cards with little reminders. I once worked with a woman who had 3 young kids, and she could not get it together in the morning. So we broke down by like 10 or 15-minute segments on these cards. 6:30, get up. 6:45, take a shower. 7 o'clock, wake up child number 1. 7:15, wake up, so and so for 15-minute segments. Because those visual cues, she had those cards taped on her bathroom mirror so she could, look at them while she was getting ready in the morning. Using index cards, using open hanging files, anything that's in your face will help you remember things. Because for us, out of sight equates out of mind. If it's out of sight, it's out of our mind. Keeping a pad of paper and a pen. This is what I use at my house. I have a notebook in my home office that never leaves my room, my home office. And that's where I dump everything. If I'm on a call and I need to remember something, let's say like today I called the lawn service and they told me how much it's going to cost to have snow removal. I write everything in that notebook and I date every entry. That is my brain. That's my executive function, my working brain. Because I know that those things are going to get lost in my head, so I always know that I can find it in that notebook. And then what I do is I take Post-it pads and I put it next to every phone in my house, so that if I take a call, let's say from the dentist who says, oh, your daughter's due in for an appointment, would you please remember to bring in her mouth guard? I'm not going to remember. So I jot it down on the Post-its, and at the end of the day at night, I pull all those Post-its and I stick it in that notebook so that, I won't forget. Using a timer is extremely helpful. We get stuck, like I said, on Facebook or other pleasurable activities, and you can use a timer if you want to tell yourself you can only be on Facebook for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Set that timer and let it ring to get you off that computer. A lot more ideas on how to use timers in my book. Apps. Thank gosh for these smartphones and computers. Hundreds and hundreds of apps. When you do a search on either iTunes or wherever you use or get your apps, plug in the ADHD part of it, because there are a lot of apps specific to adults with ADHD. You'll find tons of them. I won't get into them right now. And then mom at work. It's not men at work. Mom at work. If at all possible, try and go for flex time. If you're more awake and capable in the morning, see if you can go to work in the morning. If you're more of an afternoon person, go in the afternoon. The launch pad, that's also more explained in more detail in the book, but a launch pad is basically everything that you and every person in your family needs to get out the door, all placed in one area, one per person, so that you don't have to run around flustered in the morning. And for your kids, it would be either could be a post-it with a reminder, take your lunch out of the refrigerator, or their lunch money. Could be your briefcase, your iPhone, your keys, all those things you need in the morning. And then we talked already about taking a break before coming home. So once you get to the point of learning how to strategize and find new ways of doing things that threw you off all these years, you will be happy as a lark, happy as these women that you're looking at. Not to say that you won't, at times have problems, because like I said early on, I have problems, almost every day that has to do with my ADHD. But it's important to remember to go with your ADHD and find ways to make things work for you and change that internal negative dialogue, change it to a positive one, and allow yourself to use new strategies to make your ADHD work for you. So that's the end of that, but I wanted to just briefly go through just these websites that...
Terry, I'm just wondering, we do have quite a few questions coming in. We've only got just a little less than 10 minutes. So the websites will be listed on the replay at YouTube. Is it okay? How about if we jump into the questions so that people get them?
That's perfect.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great. So we'll just leave the screen on, and nobody needs to jot these down, okay? You can go back to YouTube and just click on this slide and take all the time in the world, but I really do want people to have a chance to ask their questions. So if we're ready, then the first one is, when I get organized, when I try to get organized, I feel a lot of anxiety. How do I begin?
I think that's a great question, and there's so many books about how to get organized, and even my books. I mean, there's tons of information on there, in those books, on how to get organized. What we're forgetting is a real central part of this whole thing, and it's a trick that that I'm using myself. And when I learned that it worked for me, I figured maybe it'll work for you ladies. That is, instead of obsessing and looking at the outside, at the clutter, at the disorganization of your home, of your car, whatever, your office, is to start instead going inward and to figure out solutions according to how you feel. Now this question is, she's saying, I'm feeling anxious. Well, sure, you're feeling anxious. So you can ask yourself, what can I do right now to make myself feel better if I can tick that off my list? So instead of getting overwhelmed by what you're seeing in front of you, again, we're very visual, so everything looks equally important and we don't know where to start. Stop. Go inside into yourself and ask, what can I do that will make me feel better? What's the first thing? Oftentimes, that very first thing will be the thing you need to do.
Okay, I think that's great. So that's a good way to address the anxiety and to calm it. And I think it's also very helpful too to identify what the physical symptoms are, or the physical states are of your anxiety. I think some people with ADHD, women with ADHD like you and me, Terry, don't even realize when they are in that anxiety. But if we learn the physical cues as well, we can do that a little sooner than later. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so here's another one. What advice do you have for moms going through perimenopause, hormonal changes, which seems to make ADHD symptoms more challenging?
I'm glad that question came up because that's I mentioned it briefly earlier on. We don't know enough, women with ADHD, I should say, don't know enough about how much hormonal changes will affect our cognition, our memory. And the first thing you need to do is talk it over with your healthcare provider. Unfortunately, a lot of gynecologists don't really understand the ADD piece of this. So if you have someone else that you're working with, a therapist or a psychiatrist, maybe you can get them to talk to each other. Hopefully they understand how hormones can make ADHD worse. What some doctors will do is they will, the logical thing is to increase your ADD medication. But this Dr. Patricia Quinn that I've been referring to earlier on is suggesting that maybe that's not the way to go, that maybe you need to look at hormonal replacement therapy. I'm not a physician, so I can't recommend that, but I'm only saying that that's something that you might want to discuss with your doctor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So here's another question. Now, Terry, this one is a bit longer, but I think it does describe a situation that many of us can relate to. So I'm going to read the whole thing in context then. So I'm a stay-at-home mom of an only child in elementary school. Quitting my job, I was a lawyer, and staying at home to look after our family in the home on the home front is a dream come true for me, but I am struggling. My question is, how can I get past the shame and sense of failure? Every time someone asks me, what are you up to these days? I panic a bit. The idea of someone coming over is alarming too. She was here for the beginning of the webinar, but in practice, how did you start to accept your circumstances and stop feeling ashamed?
I would say that what helped me the most was being around other women and men who have ADHD. I started going to CHAD support groups. CHAD is CHADD.org. It's here on the slide. I don't know if you can still see it.
Yes.
And I don't know about Canada. I don't know how many of you gals are from Canada or around the world, but here in the U.S., most major cities have a CHAD chapter, and we would get together and start talking about what we had in common. And then I began to realize, this is so many years ago, that I wasn't the only one. And by being with other women like me, it began to normalize my situation, that I'm not the only one that has a house that is completely in disarray. So that was the first shift for me, was really realizing that it wasn't just me. And then again, like I talked about earlier, reading about ADD, understanding how our brains work, that it's our biochemistry, it's not our character, it's our biochemistry. And learning how to respond to people and learning to stay away from toxic people, people who judge you, stay away from them. Find friends who are like you, who accept you and love you for who you are, for what you are able to do well, and start focusing on those positives. Let's say this woman was an attorney. Maybe she'd like to join a group of attorneys who are at-home moms, stay-at-home moms now, and she'll have something in common with them. But going with your strengths and maybe picking up some things that you did years ago that you no longer do but would like to do. Like maybe you used to play piano and that gave you a lot of pleasure and self-esteem. So finding your strengths, the things that you did well, being with people who really love you, you for who you are, and being with other people who are like you, all will be very, very helpful.
Great. That's great. But Terry, I think that's a great answer, and sort of as a corollary to that question, and I think this is something that many women with ADHD experience, and I would like to invite them to check out some of our other webinars too, where we've done entire webinars on this topic. But I know, Terry, with your expertise, you can answer this at least briefly here. Sometimes a woman actually feels inadequate in response to her husband's or her partner's comments or behavior. So it's not someone else saying, what are you up to? It's actually comments like, other women can raise 5 kids with no problem, and this woman has 2, the woman with ADHD. So those are examples. How does a woman with ADHD explain her difficulties when the inadequacy is in response to a partner or a husband?
Well, again, I think that we have to first work on ourselves. If we get to the point where we truly accept who we are, everybody, whether you have ADD or not, there are issues that we have that are challenging. And your husband or your partner, your spouse, whoever, also has challenges. So once you get to the point of true self-acceptance, those kinds of comments are not going to bother you, but they also should not happen. So there has to come a point where you have a discussion with your partner that those kinds of comments are very damaging to your relationship, and that you yourself, you aren't the only one that has challenges. You might, in a nice way, point out some of your partner's challenges. Maybe he's got a weight problem. Maybe he drinks too much. Maybe he watches too much TV. Whatever it is, everybody has a problem. There is no perfect person out there that doesn't struggle. But it has to be done in a loving, kind way, unless that person is being really aggressively hurtful, in which case, if nothing works, then I would suggest couples therapy with somebody who understands, and this is really important, that understands the ADD piece of this.
Yeah, great answer. Great answer. Okay, so we've got a couple more questions. Okay, so another question. Oh, and before I get into that, one of our attendees made a suggestion, so I want to share that. She wanted it shared with everybody. She took a picture of the websites listed because it works better for her rather than going back and looking at the replay. So I'll just put that out for everybody. Next question. I'm facing empty nest come July 2016. I've been a single mom. Any suggestions on how to transition and find my next purpose?
Oh, I wish I were you. I still have a daughter at home, and it's a little difficult. But maybe again, shifting how you see it. It's hard to let them go, but this is an opportunity for you to learn more about yourself and all the things that you couldn't do when you were parenting. And again, shifting how you see the situation, like we talked about earlier. Instead of seeing it as a negative, seeing it as a positive, as a way to explore all the things you couldn't do. Maybe you like to take up tap dancing. Maybe you'd like to be in a book club. And write those things down, because with ADD, we think about it, we forget. We think about it, we forget. Write a list. Make that your homework for tonight. Make a list of all the wonderful things you can now do now that you have your freedom. Do you notice the shift? Instead of, I'm now going to be an empty nester, I'm not happy about that, to, I have my freedom. So it's shifting how you think about your situation in a positive way.
Absolutely. I find, yes, reframing, very, very important. So, yes, let me see, more questions. Do we have time for more questions? Okay, one more. Do you have suggestions about creating gentle yet firm accountability for professional and personal goals?
Accountability. I'd like to plug my group again, because we have something in the Queens of Distraction called Accountability Club, and that's where women openly say, I need some help I need somebody to hold me accountable to finish doing my taxes, for instance. And someone will hook up with her and say, well, I'll help you, but could you help me with clearing out my basement? I've been wanting to clear the basement. So we do that in my group. You can do that in real life with a friend who is understanding. Again, you've got to be working with people who understand your situation and trade off. I will help you do X, Y, Z, maybe babysit your kid once a week. Could you help hold me accountable for the things I need to do in my life? But again, make sure it's not a toxic kind of person who's going to be critical of you. Find someone who really gets it.
Yeah, perfect. I find that's a very good approach. Okay, so one more. Holy moly. Do you recommend disclosing ADHD to, for example, in-laws, other moms in the neighborhood, or just try to accept myself without convincing others of my circumstances?
I love that question, because there's no real cut and dry answer. It's what feels right to you. If you think that if you tell a particular person of your ADHD that it's going to backfire in there because they don't get it, there are so many people out there who don't get it. Don't disclose it. You can describe your ADHD with different kinds of words. So you might say, yeah, I'm kind of a disorganized person, instead of saying, I've got ADHD. Particularly if you're working, there's times where you do not want to disclose. But to family, to friends, to neighbors, if you're uncomfortable, if you just listen to your intuition, you all have great intuition, Listen to that intuition. If you get the sense that they won't get it, don't. If you get the sense that they will be compassionate and encouraging and want to be helpful, by all means, share it. But you can also use words to describe ADHD without coming out and saying ADHD.
Okay. Oh my goodness, we're a minute over. So I believe we've managed to get in the questions, and I'm just wondering, um, can you raise your hand if you can see the Psych Central screen that I've just put up? Because I wanted to show you our YouTube channel web address. So if our attendees could just raise their hand to let me know they can see it, that would be great. Good, some of you do. I hope everyone does. So I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up now. That went so quickly. So I'd like to remind everyone that the replay of tonight's webinar will be posted at our YouTube channel later this week. And if you can't see the screen, it's youtube.com/Psych Central. And also, I'd like to really, really thank everyone who attended live tonight. There were quite a few of you, and I'd also like to thank those of you who are taking the time to listen to the replay. And of course, I'd like to thank Psych Central for hosting this. And best for last, thanks a lot, Terry. Terry Matlen, thank you so much for joining us and making this a very, very informative and enjoyable evening, and also guest appearance by the dog.
Sorry about that, but thank you. It was a blast. I'd love to come back.
Terrific. So on behalf of PsychCentral.com and me, Zoe Kessler, thanks everyone, and bye for now.